Okay, Dominique, what is your object? Oh, I think I've been muting you and you've been I've been unmuting you and you've been muting yourself. Sorry.
Okay, here is my object, if you can see it.
Ooh, okay, it's tiny. We'll get to know more about it. And Sana, what about you? Okay, I'm not quite sure what that is, but that'll be interesting. Welcome everyone to a new episode of Not Quite Strangers. My name is Valerie Hope and I am your host. And these are meaningful conversations with different people, not quite strangers. And the intention is really to build connection, to inspire curiosity, and more importantly, to challenge status quo. I have a couple of guests who've never met each other except for our time here today. So I'm excited to introduce them to you. But a couple of quick things before we get into it. Please, if you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, find Connect to Joy on YouTube. Subscribe there so you never miss an episode. Also, you can go to notquitestrangers.com. And when you subscribe, you'll start to receive all of the episodes in your inbox, right, just through email. Now, first of all, before we get started, I know both Dominique and Sana have brought objects and they'll share with us in a second. But I want you guys to know the reason I invited these two amazing people is one, they've both been on my podcast Time to Come Alive before. So they're already pros, they're vetted, and they're just fascinating people. I met Dominique, gosh, Dominique has been 2 years, almost 2 years, a year and a half ago. And she and I met through a wellness program that was online, and we ended up having been appointed as accountability partners. Dominique is in Geneva, Switzerland. She's originally Swedish, so we'll hear more about that. And we just hit it off right away, been fast friends ever since. And then Sana and I have known each other for not even a year, I don't think, Sana, right? I think maybe sometime.
About a year, yeah, almost.
Yeah. I think we met this summer. And clicked as well. And Sana and I met because we're both executive coaches through the Berkeley Executive Coaching Program, and just started chatting and had really wonderful conversations ever since. So thank you two so much for saying yes to being on Not Quite Strangers. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
I'm glad. So tell us about your objects. Dominique, you go first.
Okay, so this is an object that, so it's it's just like a necklace and a pendant. And it's, you probably don't see it well, but it's a lotus flower. And I bought it when I decided to change life, to start teaching yoga. And it was called also New Beginning. So to convince myself that I could do it, I really wanted to have like a reminder that I would see every day. So that's why I put it on myself. Then I lost it, and then I bought it again because I really didn't want to lose the meaning. But then I found again the first one I had. So yeah, and also the lotus is often used in yoga tradition, also showing as a symbol that you can have like your roots in the mud, but you still have a beautiful flower. So also showing, the subconscious, all the mess we have to deal with, but then also seeing that you can transcend that and flourish in life. So that was like a nice symbol that I enjoyed.
Wow, that's a cool story.
Ooh. So you lost it and you bought a second one.
Yeah, because I thought I can't let just this cut my dream or cut my dedication or my determination to do this. So yeah.
So double down, you blinged out and you do yoga. Look at that. Love you. Sana, what about your object?
All right. So first of all, can you guess what it is?
Is it a nose plug?
It's actually, yeah, it's a nose clip. Okay, so here it is. Okay, this is what you do. It could be a necklace too, that is less pretty than Dominique's one. And this is how you use it. You just open it, pinch it on your nose, and you cannot breathe through your nose anymore.
Okay.
All right. So I don't sleep like this, even if I could try as an experiment. But actually, this object is very useful to me. I'm a free diver, which means that I spend way more time than regular people, I would say, trying to hold my breath underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very useful because this actually little device allows me to keep my head in the water and shut my mouth, and I don't have to think about what's going on in my nose or whatever. Okay?
Nice. Oh, I don't know if that's nice, but it sounds like, but it's helpful.
It is helpful. It's functional. And it's also a reminder why I brought the object today. It's because it's also a reminder of what I'm doing with breath. Not only holding my breath, but just like breathing in general, and to my relationship with water.
Lovely relationship with water, and then what you're doing with breath. No, it's interesting. Both of you have very unique connections to the work that you do, right? And it's all based on in mindfulness. So I'm curious about what is it about that particular practice that you so identify with, or that you chose to make a lifestyle? What was it about it that attracted you? I want to ask you both the question. So whoever wants to go first, go.
Okay, I was trained as a conference interpreter, where we translate or interpret. So we often do several things at the same time. We will be listening to someone, processing the information, and talking at the same time that the speaker is speaking. So I could see in a way that you can do different things at the same time, but deeply I know that really humans, we're not made for multitasking. And I feel that really our society is going more and more towards, I remember I had a neighbor who we have like free concert at on the lake with the sunrise during the summer, but she would bring her computer with her, or she would swim at the same time, but she would do something at the same time that she would watch the sunrise and listen to a concert live. And I was thinking, yeah, it's just, I also feel we have a leakage in energy when we do that. We just don't notice it, but we're getting more and more scattered. And now that we have devices and we are even more captivated by that, I can feel in my system, in my body, that it's not natural. So for me, it's a way to come back to myself and to not try to escape myself in the end. Yeah.
So X to multitasking and being single focused. That's interesting. And what was it that made you want to take this on yourself? Like, what did you find it does for you?
I think it's really not so much, it's really just having the experience. So the first time I had a yoga class, I remember it was almost 20 years ago. At the time, it was not that much mainstream. You didn't see it on advertising. You didn't have like yoga studios. You had it in some gyms. They started doing it. And I was just curious about it. And I remember I went to my first yoga class and I felt I was feeling good, but I went to the yoga class and afterwards I felt so much better. And I thought, wow, you can actually feel like that all the time if you choose to do that practice. Interesting. So it was just, feeling the benefits. I mean, in a way you feel like alive, like the energy is flowing. At the same time, you feel relaxed. And what I feel now that I teach as well is that most people are like in overdrive with their mind, like they're totally, but they are often physically depleted, even if they do sports, often because it's just too much. So for me, it's really just the experience that attracted me, because it's like anything good for you. The more you do, the more you crave it, because your body wants to go towards like equilibrium and balance. So if you start a process, you will just do it more and more until you find your own balance.
I totally get that. It's interesting. And Sana, for you, when I think of free diving, I think of some, like open water, or, the Atlantic Ocean or Pacific Ocean or something, Indian Ocean. And, you live in Montreal, Quebec. So I'm thinking, where might one get the inspiration to do that kind of work? But you come originally from Serbia, Croatia, Serbia?
Yes, I have family roots in Serbia, but I grew up in France, and then I lived in different parts of the world. I lived in Thailand and Southeast Asia for a long time, in Denmark, and I moved to Canada like 15 years ago. So I've lived part of my life close to body of waters, and in Quebec, in Montreal, we actually have a very big river called the St. Lawrence River. It's very cold, but still, even in winter, we are trying to have a dip in the St. Lawrence River and to, actually swim, free dive in the St. Lawrence River. So we don't have the hot Caribbean Sea, but still there are body of waters here, plenty of water in Quebec, and there's plenty of fun to be had.
So what attracted you to doing that in a body of water? I mean, versus watching a sunset and listening to a concert. what was it that made you want to go in and go deep?
Yeah, well, I think it's an old story, and the story probably, the seed of the story is probably a movie called Le Grand Bleu in French. I think the English equivalent is The Big Blue. And I think this movie came out 1988. So I was quite young, but I finally got into the water in freediving 2 years ago, when on my birthday I turned 45, and I've decided that I was gonna do what I've always dreamt of, which was like doing the Big Blue, trying it out. So there was a conscious decision, and at the same time, I think that I was attracted to water because I needed a break. I needed a break from my regular activities, and I think I needed to turn inside. I used to be a martial artist. I fought in Muay Thai. Then I became a trainer. I took care of people for like more than 25 years. And most of my life has always been targeted towards the outside and the others, I believe. And I just came to some kind of a realization that, well, okay, there's something wrong. Even in my body, I started to suffer from several injuries in my body, and pain would become a part of my everyday. And I think all that actually were signs for me to actually, okay, there is a need to stop and to rest and to go inside. I'm able to articulate it now because it's been a journey of the last almost 2 years, right? It didn't feel like that at the beginning, but I think retrospectively, this is what brought me into breath and water. And freediving was actually the perfect vessel to be in that.
What's interesting, what's coming up for me now is because both of you have these practices so centered on like the body and the mind, right? The breath, the alignment. I wonder, and I know I'm putting you guys on the spot, but if you could bring a brand of what it is that you do to center yourself or ground yourself to this conversation, what can you share with us that we might be able to all do together, and people that are watching or listening could do alongside? Just something really brief that would help us get kind of centered and grounded right now.
What I do often at the beginning of a yoga practice when I'm teaching, because people sometimes, well, now with COVID, many people practice from home, but before, after work, they would rush to the studio trying to be like, okay, now I'm ready for yoga, but you're still in that sort of energy, like hectic thing. I would always start with the breath. So what I suggest, if you want to follow, you can place one hand on the belly button, the other hand at the center of the chest. So very simple. Then you can close your eyes. And when you inhale, you can really feel your body expanding. And when you exhale, the hands are lowering. And you can also add the visualization of a balloon. On the inhale, the balloon is inflating in all directions, to the front, to the back, to the sides. And on the exhale, you are deflating the balloon. It's coming back to center. You keep breathing at your own rhythm, just making sure that you slow down the breath. Remembering that oxygen is your first nourishment before food, before any liquid. It's really the oxygen that will bring life to you, some energy. So you breathe without forcing anything, finding your own rhythm. Just feeling the body, which is expanding on the in-breath and releasing tensions on the out-breath. You really feel the contact with your hands, yeah. And then you can open your eyes. I don't know where to go on.
It's like, ah. Wow,
Yeah.
lovely. And it's just a taste. But Sana, what about for you? What would you bring at this moment?
Well, at this moment, and because I don't want to do I practice a lot what Dominique just actually shared with us, which I believe it's a fantastic practice. It's very simple. Your breath is always there. Maybe another way to spin that could be also like to just like have contact with your breath, close your eyes, and suddenly pay attention to the noises around you. So it's very simple, just like sit, lay down on the ground, like any position, or just stand, close your eyes, and very simply and calmly try to pay attention to the sounds around you. So the sounds that are far, and then slowly you can come closer to yourself. Maybe there are other sounds that could be very, very close to you. And then you can get inside of your body.
Thank you.
That's simple.
Very simple. And the breath is always with us. And
Yes.
we can talk about maybe later on, if we want to energize, the breath also serves us to do both, right? And you know, I have to admit, both of you have been on my podcast before, and I know we've had a lot of these conversations about why you got into what you do. And we even had both of you do some sort of practice for us. So for those of you who missed it and would like to check out a more in-depth practice for Dominique and for Sana, I'll make sure that I add that into the show notes so that they can use it as reference. But it's delightful to just know that it's like it's already embedded. The practices are embedded. It's just a matter of connecting with them. So now I'm curious to know, how did you feel when I invited you to meet a stranger and be on this podcast and do it live?
I was very excited. Oh, Sorry, yeah. Dominique.
No, it's good.
Maybe that shows my excitement to meet you.
Your excitement.
I think that was a fantastic project, and I was super happy to receive that invitation, actually. And just because I'm first of all, because I'm curious, and I think that's what I'm trying to cultivate in general, like to stay open and flexible, and to meet new people, like to see, okay, what can I learn from other people around me? So that's the first reason. I think on the second level, I just realized in the last 9 months, because of COVID, and we were so cut from the people around us because of, you know, the pandemic and all the regulations that go with it. Can you get out, see your friends, not see your friends, etc., etc. that I realized maybe a month ago that most of the people I've really interacted with in the last month was online. And suddenly, whether you would be in Geneva like Dominique right now, or in Dallas, in San Francisco, or in Thailand, or wherever, like I could get closer to people that were like very far from me. Just because anyway, I couldn't see the people that were close to me in my own city. So I think that also opened the door to say, okay, the world is not only the people that I see usually around me and the circle that I have. Those circles can expand almost indefinitely, and I can get the opportunity to suddenly freely meet somebody without some kind of restrictions, or I don't have time because I have to see other people. Suddenly it's just like, oh, okay, I'm home anyway and I'm behind a computer, so you know, let's go. I want to travel to Switzerland and meet Dominique.
Yay, me too.
It's virtual.
Dominique and I have never met in person. And Sana, you and I have never met in person.
Exactly.
And look at that. That is fascinating, right? Yeah, you're right. I love what you said about like this is an opportunity to expand your circle, but it's almost like getting close because of distance. Like there's something about having this distance from other people that brings other people closer. So that's fascinating. Okay. Dominique, what about you? What was your experience?
It's funny because I wanted to say pretty much it's the same, but it was like the reverse. I said, well, I don't know because it came at the same time, but the same is like curiosity, because I always like meeting new people, different backgrounds, different, lifestyles, whatever. And I think moreover, if we're not quite strangers, but we have a person in common who sees, that it could be a nice conversation or meeting. I mean, I trust that. Of course, I trust you fully. And I am always curious to see, why would she put two strangers together? And of course, then excitement, because I think life is, I don't know, life can be exciting and this. And it's true also on the second level. I was just realizing the same thing pretty much last week. So maybe I'm a slower learner, but I was trying to remember because we say that it's said that you are the average of the 5 people you see most. And I was thinking, okay, but last year, who did I see so regularly? Because of course we had so many restrictions that physically for, sometimes weeks, you didn't really see physically friends. And then I realized that it's true, many people that I'm in touch with, and you are such an example, like we are in touch every other week. And we've been doing that for like a year and a half, and we barely know each other on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's true, it goes so deeper, because you can meet some people in real life where you just, chit chat, and it's, it's nice, it's summer, you're having a drink or whatever, you're by the lake, and it doesn't really go very deep. But I think online, if you just have that, it doesn't go very far. So it's this opportunity to meet new people again without borders. And, I live in Geneva, which is very cosmopolitan. We have people from all over the world. It's very multicultural from the start, but it's true. It's online. You just, you can travel anywhere.
Well, both of you clearly have that value, right? The value of expanding your social circle and your connection. You both also like to go deep. You like to have meaningful conversations. So what is it about people from other places and having meaningful conversations that draws you so much?
It's the best way to evolve. I think it's to be exposed to like we can be certain of things in life. We can, and I don't judge it, because I mean, in a way, it would be nice to be born, have a certain vision of life and keep that vision forever. But for me, I grew up in a small village, and I always felt that there was so much more than just my own vision or way of life and the one of my neighbors. So I just think if you meet people from other countries, languages, already the fact that you have another language, because I was trained in learning different languages, it's already another vision of the world. I don't know, how you express yourself is already like, you treat the information differently, your life vision is different, the way you apprehend reality is different, or other aspects, life, death, whatever, is so different. And, if you start traveling, you notice that. So for me, that's what that's what makes me, I feel grow, even if, and I mean, now I think I always feel I'm so blessed, or we are so blessed to be living in this era where we have, with the internet, we have access to so many resources, people, things. And I always feel, if I had been born like 100 years ago, where traveling was not really an option, you would, unless you were like maybe a higher class or for work maybe, but you would really just have your own reality and you would never be exposed to anything else. But I mean, for us, I feel, all like, of course, I studied a lot yoga or Eastern traditions. It's such a, I don't know, it's such a different perspective on life, on death, on anything, on your relationship to your own body, to your mind, to your spirit, to many things. So yeah, I feel you learn a lot when you do that.
Well, and what languages do you speak, Dominique?
So French is my mother tongue. Second language is Swedish. Then I have Italian, English, Spanish. And I had some German at school, but never been fluent in that one. But I could still understand a few things, yeah.
Fabulous. Wunderbar.
Wunderbar, yeah.
Sana, what about for you? What is it about expanding your circle and going deep that is meaningful?
I think it's linked to my personal history, but at the same time, it's because I believe that's where I come alive. I think from a very, I come from a place where I grew up in some kind of in France, in some kind of a project neighborhood. So when I was 10 years old at school, I think there was like something like 70 different nationalities. So from a very young age, I was with people coming from Africa, Asia, North Africa, South America, or European countries, or Pakistan, or like, you name it. And I think that they were my friends. I had Italian friends, or from Italian backgrounds, or from Arabic backgrounds, African backgrounds, South Asian backgrounds. And I was always super curious. It's like we were together in the same neighborhood, in the same kind of social conditions. And we were all have a story. Our families were not from friends from that place. And us kids, we were, whether coming from those places at a very young age, with very often some kind of a traumatic story, or we were born here, but from parents who were not from here. So I think that I've always felt somewhat out of place or a bit different from a very young age. And for me, being with people that were different from the majority was suddenly my happy place. That was where I would belong. And I think it's no mystery that I live in Montreal, for example, because Montreal, like you seem to say, Geneva, Dominique, is a very multicultural city. You can have every kind of food. You have people from every part of the world here, different languages. We mix French, English, Spanish, Creole, all sorts of languages together. And I feel this is where I'm alive. I feel safe in those kind of environments. So I think this is it, and it's because I lived in different countries, I've traveled, I've experienced life and death in different parts of the world. And I believe that was also intuitively something about me that was trying to understand myself through confronting myself with other people in other cultures.
That's so interesting you say that, because I've often said, I want the experience. I've traveled a lot. I've been to like 31 countries now in my time, but I've not had the experience of, as an adult anyway, of living long-term in a particular country, especially one where I did not speak the language, or, and I want to do that because I feel like there's a part of me that I'll get to meet. I have not seen her yet, right? There's something about being in a different country and culture, just like the two of you have mentioned, the experience of learning a different language, of understanding and listening to people differently, that expands who we get to be. So that's fascinating to me. And I would say my immediate family anyway, as far as I know, everybody in my immediate family shares that value. Like we all appreciate and embrace other cultures. We were raised that way. So I'm curious about how you guys were raised. Like how are you the weird ones in your family? like how do you fit into your family in this way, this multicultural appreciation that you have?
Well, I am in a multicultural family because my mother is Swedish, my father is Swiss. So I think nowadays, especially living in Geneva, where it is, I mean, you barely find 100%, like someone who's 100% Swiss, but, you know, in a small village in the 70s or 80s, you didn't have that many multicultural backgrounds. And so for me, I think my family is like that. My mother had also studied languages. So she came to Switzerland. She had come to France before, but then to Switzerland, like end of the 60s. So, and for me, speaking two languages was natural. So with my mom, I would speak Swedish. At home, we would speak French because my father never learned Swedish. Then when we went to Sweden on holiday, the common language between the grown-ups would be English, because my father still had not learned Swedish, because everyone in Sweden speaks English pretty much. And then I switched to having English as well. So it's just been, in a way, being a bridge as well, because sometimes I would like naturally, you know, I like also including people. So I would always sort of already like translate or interpret for people around me when I would see like one doesn't speak the other language. And also Switzerland is multicultural. We have four languages actually. And being in, you know, center of Europe, we are easily exposed also to different languages. So yeah, I think it really runs in my family as well. It's really a value, being open to differences, experiencing it. And my brother now is married to a Mexican woman. So now we have like also the Mexican family sometimes visiting, or yeah, so it's just natural, but it's been passed through. Yeah, it's really like a family. Like my brother loves traveling. He's been, I don't know, you said 30 countries for you. I think it's about 30 countries for me, but my brother would probably be almost, I don't know, 80 countries or very much for also for work. Wow. And, but I still feel I feel in my family, everyone is very different. Like our personalities are very different, but again, it's like this very tolerance, like we have like different sometimes interests, or we are totally different, but we are curious about, you know, the others and what they do. So it's also having, you know, being curious, I feel, or open is really not just about other culture. It's just people being different from you. So that's how it started as well. Yeah. But I still feel sometimes I'm the weirdo in the family.
Okay. You didn't talk about that part. What makes you weird?
I don't know. I'm not weird. I've always been very too reasonable, I feel as well. But I still feel I'm weird because I'm maybe more, I think all my family are much more, I don't know, none of them is spiritual, like none of them was like believing in God or anything. And for me, I never really believed, I think as a kid, I would say I believed in God, but just because you had to have a representation and you know, but for me, it's more like I believe in other things than what can just be seen. And I think the rest of my family just believe what they see. And for me now, it's more, you first have to believe and then you see. It's not you have to first see and then you believe. So I think we have like on this, we're totally different.
That's precious.
Yeah. Sana, what about you?
I don't know if I'm the weird one. I'm definitely different. But I don't have like, I don't know. I take great inspiration from my grandfather on my dad's side, because he was born in Serbia, and he actually escaped Serbia one night and to join one of his friends who was in France. So he traveled through Germany, Italy, and ended up in France, then was enrolled as a legionnaire in the army. And he went to Vietnam for the first war of Vietnam. Then they lived in Tunisia, and then he went back to France. He would speak, obviously, Serbian. He would speak a little bit of German, a little bit of Italian. He would speak French, even if he never really had formal education. So I take great inspiration from his journey. But then the rest of my family is pretty like, okay, they're not like big travelers. My dad liked to travel, and he did some interesting things. Not my mom, but they were separated. So I never had like a tight unit as a family. And I felt that for me, traveling or meeting other people one more time was a way for me to escape my situation at one way growing up, and to also like try to find pieces of me. Because yeah, I don't know why, but it was always like, okay, I don't really know who I am, where I'm coming from. And my grandfather escaped Serbia because of economic situation and political situation, and for him, like the grandsons, we were born in France, and there was no way for him to teach us anything about Serbia. It was behind. He flew the country because he wanted all the family to have a better life. So there was no way for us to go back there, for example, which has always been something in me that was like, damn, I miss so much about those roots. But he would never allow anybody like to speak Serbian to the grandsons. It was only for him and his children. But the next generation, there was like, okay, you have to learn French, speak French, write French properly, read French properly, and that's it. That's all. This is where life is. That was one thing. But I guess like I was always like, no, it cannot be this. The environment I am in and I'm growing up in, which was some type, of a tough environment. I was like, it's not possible that it's only this. The world is too big. So at a very young age, books, TV, everything would be an opportunity for me to discover something about the world, and some places that were far. If it's far, I was excited. And that's funny because I was born in France. Now I live in Canada. I know very little about France. It's like if I'm discovering France because I'm in Canada and I'm watching TV and documentaries on regions of France that I've never been. I'm like, oh, I didn't know there was this. I didn't know there was that. I was always, my mother used to tell that to me. Like, you were 11 and you said, one day I would live somewhere else. And that's exactly what I said. I left France, I think, for my first big trip in the Central African Republic. I was 18 years old. And it's like, that's it. And I never really came back to settle myself in France. I was like, whoop, all over the place.
I've always found that so fascinating about how, I don't know if easy is the right word. Perhaps for the three of us, there's some level of ease in being in other cultures or being engaged, involved with other cultures, or even living in other places. But, you all know I was born in Panama, and at 9 years old, we immigrated to the US. And even then, after, learning English as a second language, I can't ever say that I didn't feel part of it, because when you're young, you just absorb everything, including, lifestyle, the culture, language, values in many ways too. But I always kind of felt kind of like you're saying, that there's pieces of me that were in other places. I'm like, this isn't it. Like, this can't be it. And I still feel that way. And even I remember in college specifically, when I actually connected with the international community, that was probably the closest to feeling at home with people that I felt outside of my immediate family, right? Because a friend of mine calls it this third culture experience. Yeah, you're not really this, you're not really that, but there's some other, I'm part of that other. And so, and that's what draws me to have, people like the two of you in my life as well, because I feel always so drawn to like the other, even if you all belong to a specific, there's a specific nationality or something, but so I'm curious about, what is it that draws you to others? Like, when you are attracted to a particular culture or to connect with a particular type of person, what do you notice about yourself that draws you in?
I don't know. There's so many things, but I was relating a bit to what both of you were saying. Also, for me, you know, having two different cultures, you say you never fully one, you never fully the other. So, you know, when I'm in Switzerland, I feel I have to cultivate the Swedish part of me because I'm always afraid it will disappear otherwise. So I cultivate that. But when I go to Sweden, I feel I'm never fully Swedish because I didn't grow up there. So I'm missing a lot of references and things, and even the language is not perfect. But I always feel when you meet people from different cultures, and even more if you speak a different language, then you have a different aspect of yourself that reveals, as you were saying, maybe when you live abroad. But I remember like a striking example was like my best friend. I met her when we were living in Italy. So she's Swiss German, but from Italian origins. I'm like, yeah, Swiss and Swedish, but French speaking mainly. But we met in Italy. And then when we came back to Geneva, we decided to become roommates, or flatmates. So we decided to find an apartment. And I remember when we would go grocery shopping, for instance, because we were speaking Italian together, we would be loud and we would be like totally different than if I would be speaking French to her. And I knew that. So just the fact that, you know, we were speaking, even in my own country, if I speak a different language, I feel I'm not the same. It's another part of me that, because culturally, and, you know, also when you interpret, like I'm an interpreter, so, you know, as a background, like Italian, they will speak with the hands, same with, you know, Spanish speaking people, very like theatrical, you know, everything. If you do the same exactly in French, you look silly. People would not take you seriously. So you have to, you know, if they say 5 adjectives, you would put 2 of them, even, you know, you want to be exhaustive, but you have to respect the culture of, you know, the people you're addressing. And the same, you know, I never did that, but if you had to translate somebody Spanish speaking or Italian speaking to Swedish or English, you know, the same. If it's, and you know, especially from England, there's so much more like cool, calm, and collected, and like, you know, a few words but very specific. The other ones very flourishing, and so, yeah, I really feel you experience different aspects of yourself. Totally.
I'm laughing because just a few days ago, I did a talk in Spanish. It was for a Spanish program. My godfather watched and he was like, "Oh my gosh, your hands were like all over the, like, yes, and sí, cuando nosotros a veces, no." And it's so true. Yeah. And in English, I tend to be expressive too. It's part of my personality, but you're absolutely right. I tend to moderate a little bit more. And especially depending on who I'm speaking with, but it's a different, my sense of humor is different. I'll just share one quick story. Yeah. So we left Panama when I was 9, and we didn't go back again until I was 14 for the first time. My grandparents stayed in Panama. So we went to visit. I was 14, the first time we ever went back after moving here. And I lost some of my Spanish. I shouldn't say lost. I hadn't gained any Spanish because we weren't around Spanish speaking people in the US. And my education stopped abruptly when we left Panama. So when I came back to Panama and I went to a gathering of the people in the neighborhood, and they were having like a party and enjoying life and having, you know, fun and making jokes. And, you know, 14, I was very self-conscious anyway, but I was like, I didn't know what, like, I knew that I wanted to say something, but I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you say that? What's the expression? Because I had the vocabulary of a 9-year-old, not a 14-year-old. And it was so frustrating. I was the introvert at that party. And you guys know that I am not introverted, generally speaking. So I was like, I can't believe I cannot express my ideas. I can't make the jokes that I want to make. So when I came back to the US, I'm like, I'm just going to go back to, I'm going to take Spanish classes. So I took Spanish all through high school, which is almost like repeating elementary school. It was a lot of the, you know, basics. But in college, I also continued. And then we made a commitment as a family, and we went back almost every year through college until my grandfather passed away. And that made a huge difference. But I feel like I have a different sense of humor in Spanish than I do in English. And I don't know, but I imagine you guys feel the same way with your languages. But so, yeah, talk to me about some of that. I don't even know where we are in the conversation anymore. This is just fun. What do you want to say, Sana?
No, I don't know. I can totally relate to what you said and what Dominique said about changing the way you speak depending on the language, or just mimicking some of the attribute of a language or of a certain people just by being immersed in the language and in the culture. I think that's very true. and I've noticed it myself. Like some people would say, oh, but when you're with your African friends, suddenly it's just some kind of having an African accent. Are you playing or whatever? And I was like, no, I don't even realize that. It's just because from, you know, listening to TV, to music and people and just being around, it just somewhat happened naturally, I guess, or I have no filter, so it's just this or that. It happened to me in Thailand too, where I would phone to people in Thailand speaking in Thai, and then when I would see them in face to face, for example in administration, sometimes they would look at me and I was like, did you call? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, because we were expecting, oh, okay, you were not expecting a white face showing up, right? And I was like, yeah, your Thai was like, you know, okay. I'm like, oh, okay, well, thank you. I would take it as a compliment actually, but that's it. Yeah, I don't know. It's for me, I feel like all those, it's very sensual. I don't know if you say that in English, by the way, but
you want to give us some context?
yes, I will. Because it talks to all these talk to my senses a lot. So there's a part of me that is drawn to others or to other cultures and countries, language, whatever. At first, it's an intuition, I guess. There's something that I cannot explain. Another part of it is that it's relating to the sense. I could hear a word in a specific language that I don't know, but I would just love the sound of that word. And this would create an impulse. For example, for me to research, say, what is this word? What does it mean? And then that would lead me to something else. And then suddenly I want to learn the whole sentence. And then eventually I would repeat that sentence. And then I was like, oh, I'd like to learn another one. And then suddenly you start to learn a language. It could be taste. You taste a specific food from a specific place made by a specific person. And then suddenly you have, oh my God, this is the best rice I've ever had. You know, and suddenly you're like, okay, so this is Thai cuisine. And this is like, I don't know, Creole cuisine. And then this is this. So you're drawn to a whole culture through food and through taste. See, sometimes it's a vision. You see, I don't know, I would see, I could say, I don't know, like a Buddha. And then suddenly I was like, wow, I'm attracted to that specific image. What's behind, what's around it? And then I would start to research and try to connect. And then eventually that's how you decide to go, okay, I want to go see that place. So I'm going to take a plane and go there. And then I want to understand what's going on. So I'm going to speak with people. And fortunately, if somebody can speak a little bit or articulate a little bit, then it's kind of, you find a gatekeeper or someone that opens some gates for you, and you get into another layer of experiences. And then you're going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So I guess for me, that's a lot how it happened and how I love to see it happening.
I'm glad you explained sensual, but that I could hear all the different variations of using your senses. No, very good. So I'm so curious about this now that you guys have shared these experiences. What parts of you have you found as you interact with people from other cultures, or if you've traveled to other countries? Like, what's something you discovered about yourself? Like for me, for example, I've always been interested in people. That's, you know, just making friends and connecting with people. But I remember when I lived with host families in different countries, like in Germany specifically, many of the German host families I stayed with did not speak any English or Spanish. And so I was somehow really fascinated in like learning German. I'm not even sure why. I even found that there was this interest for, like, I was in Bonn, Germany, and I went to the Deutschlandgeschichte Museum, so the German History Museum, and it was fascinating. And we went to Dachau, and then from there I was like, oh my gosh, I need to go to Auschwitz. So I went to Poland, and we did a field trip there. And then from there, I I discovered that I had this passion, call it a passion, it's kind of a dark history, but a passion for learning about World War II, not in the historic sense, but in just like, how were the people back then? How did they survive? How did they communicate with each other? How did they transform after all of that? I even went to Hiroshima in Japan. I took a bullet train because I only had one day to do this. And I was like, I need to go. But that's a part of me that I don't think I would have ever seen or experienced had I not been to Germany that first time and felt somehow like I don't know if attraction is the right word, but there was something that just drew me in to the history of that particular time. What about for you guys? What's an experience that you've had that you found in yourself that's like came alive because of your travel experience?
I feel for me what I discovered thanks to my first stay abroad, which was 1 year in Boston, USA, is really that you can come to a totally, and I had done a bit like you were saying, Sana, going as far as possible, because I could have gone to England, but I thought, oh, England, some people might come and visit me quite regularly because it's too close and I could go home for Christmas and I don't want to go home for Christmas. So going far, and then you really are, I mean, you don't know anyone when you arrive. I was also in a host family. I was an au pair taking care of children. But what I found fascinating is regardless of your culture, wherever you end up on earth, you still make friends, you still find your favorite place, you still, find a new home. I felt home after 2 weeks maybe. And and everywhere I've lived, I felt home. I really have this inner feeling that, wow, I'm home. I know the neighborhood, I know some people, I feel so comfortable. And I think it's kind of fascinating the first time at least you experience it. It's like, you feel you will never be alone in your life because I don't know, there is this connection, and doesn't depend on the number of people you meet. It's more that you find this common humanity with everyone, and you feel that you can reproduce this safety or this feeling at home. That's really what I would describe. So that was for me a strong experience. Yeah, because I think that's what prevents most people from actually leaving their comfort zone and where they grew up is they are afraid of of the unknown. But when you experience going through this and feeling that, oh, actually, it's not difficult, even if you, as you say, maybe at the beginning, I didn't speak very well English. I had studied English, but I remember my 5-year-old I was taking care of was saying, we don't say pizza, we say pee. I mean, she would say pizza, and I was like, what's the difference? She was very strict. And she would say, once I remember, she said, we don't say perhaps, we say maybe. I was like, okay, because I had learned British English and very academic and not very, idiomatic. So yeah, but yeah, you can really make friends. And sometimes and I feel also maybe because for me, I often knew when I traveled, lived abroad, that it would be for a short time. Everything became so intense. You meet new people, it becomes quickly a good friend, because I don't know, you need to have these experiences and to do again, your new surroundings. And so everything goes so as you were saying, we like deep things. So it goes deep but quickly, and it's very intense. And then you keep these bonds forever. I mean, I have friends from England or from back in the USA. So I was in the USA was 93, 94. I still consider them super close to me. And we didn't have internet at the time. And we would write letters, and one would be in Austria, one would be in Germany, one would be still in the US, but the bond is there. It's so intense for me compared to anything that could, linger. Yeah,
I agree with that.
Can I bounce on that idea? Because there's something that strikes me is intensity. I think that
bounce away.
maybe I'm gonna repeat myself here, but those experiences are very intense, and to me, I think retrospectively, it's one more time, it's something that where you would feel alive. You would feel alive. You would feel that, okay, there is way more than what I thought. There is way more than what I've been told. There is way more than my circumstances at that moment. And that's this realization, this feeling of being that alive, I think that is something that keeps attracting me. And still now, even if I'm in Montreal for 15 years, which is for me, it's some kind of it's very unusual. I would move like all the time. Like in the first 10 years in Montreal, I think that I changed apartment like 14 times, right? So I would move all the time, even in the same city, but still I would move all the time. So yeah, I think intensity for me would be like a big word. And I also learned that how adaptable human beings can be.
We are very adaptable. And I think bouncing off of something you said, Dominique, that I don't know this to be true, but I can get that it is sometimes, if you haven't been taught, right? If you haven't been shown that you can be safe, that you can be connected, that you can feel at home in other places, it almost keeps people in their same spot. But I wonder if you also have a lack of, maybe there's an opportunity for us to build trust in ourselves, that if you can make, you can make friends, that you can ask for what you need, right? That you can share an idea, you can share an opinion, you can share part of yourself. And I remember there were times, especially when living with host families. I mean, that was 5 years of my life where I lived out of a suitcase and lived with host families. There were maybe like 400 of them in that span of time. And it sounds like a lot. And now I'm like, wow, that's a lot of beds. But there are moments where I knew I was the only person of color that had ever set foot in that person's home or slept in their bed or ate at their dinner table. And so sometimes some silly, I wouldn't say silly questions, but there were questions that came up that people were curious about, anything about my hair or about, some culture in the US. I would get asked a lot, does everybody in the US have guns? Because they heard so much about the gun culture. And so it was interesting to experience who I got to be in other countries, but also from a sense of I could trust myself to still share who I am, how I am, what I think. And people are still interested. Now you still have to connect with the right people. I don't know. Why do you guys think that now that Dominique and Sana, you've met each other, why do you think I introduced you two? What is your sense now after having this conversation?
I feel the three of us, we have a lot of in common with this like curiosity, liking people, liking different cultures. I find it's very natural. I would have made the same connection if I had been in your head. I would have picked, if it was me, but I knew the two of you, I would have said, oh, but I think Valerie would be a good connection to Sana. It seems, I don't know, from the entire conversation, like even, when you were talking, I'm like, it's part of, my beliefs or what resonates with me a lot. So I totally see why. Yeah, I perceive it at least. Yeah. Yeah.
Sana, what about you?
Actually, I'm kind of surprised because I had no specific expectations. I was curious, but in my head I was like, oh, okay, I'm in breath work, I'm in martial arts, Dominique is in yoga. And we both of us had like different careers and made change and transitions. So I was like, okay, maybe, the podcast is going to be and the encounter and discussions might be around those kind of topics. And, even from the beginning with the objects, it's like, oh, okay, the objects are representing something that that is familiar to me, that is one of my practices. And it was, I believe it's the same, that Dominique, your necklace is deeply rooted in your practice and in your transition. And I find it like, serendipity, this word, like that suddenly all this is completely forgotten. And it's all about the three of us suddenly connecting about us being like, okay, we are maybe those third culture childs, if you want to label it, but actually we are some kind of weird animals that always wanted to, felt that there was some excitement or something to be chased outside of our physical bodies and where we were born or where we were living at some point.
Mhm.
And I find that like super interesting, because it's just like, oh, okay, cool. You too? Great. That's the magic of the encounter, I guess.
Yeah.
And finally, this is exactly the conversation that I believe the three of us could have in a foreign country, on a beach, or in a bar, or in a restaurant, or whatever. 3 tables, each of us being alone, eating our food, and then suddenly, hey, can you pass me the salt, or I don't know what, or like, hey, where are you from? And then, where are you from? And then suddenly we end up spending 3 hours together, just sharing stories about traveling and meeting people, and being happy of meeting each other.
100%.
And
like,
it's like, okay, tomorrow let's do that activity together.
Yeah.
and I want you to meet somebody else.
I know.
That's what I would. And Sana, you're absolutely right. That was one of my first instinct was, yeah, you guys work in a similar industry and space, and maybe we'll start having conversation about that. And, I think part of it for me is just being in the moment and hearing some of the thoughts and ideas. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let's go there. And that all of those shared values, those shared ideas or experiences is what adds that, for me anyway, added the curiosity, right? It wasn't as important anymore to talk about mindful practice. And we did the breathing in that was great. And oh, this is fun. So thank you guys for being in the moment with me. I'm curious, what are you taking?
But the thing about mindfulness, I feel it's being fully present to what's unfolding, and not being fixed with, like, as you were saying, like maybe like an idea you had before, maybe you prepared, like, the conversation. But if you prepare too much, you're not really with the other people, because you just want to place your sentence or your question or your brilliant answer or whatever. Yeah. And I think for me, this is like a practical case of being, fully present. So
100%. Yeah. And you guys were very easy to do that with. So I'm curious, 2 questions for each of you. One, what surprised you the most about this conversation? We may have just discussed it, but if there was something else, do share. And then 2, what are you taking from the conversation? What are you taking away from it?
I think there's one thing that I'm not necessarily surprised, but I'm delighted by it, is that it was not like you mediating that much a conversation between Dominique and I, because we ended up like the 3 of us sharing, and you as the host also like contributing just in the conversation and not being the host. I'm the host, I make you guys talk together. No, we ended up like, I feel like just being, okay, the 3 of us, let's have a tea and let's have a conversation, and that's it, that's all. Yeah. I'm delighted by that. Don't know if I'm surprised, maybe. No, but the feeling is delighted. End of story. And what I'm gonna take out of it is probably when is next? When is the next one? Like,
well, hey, let's do it. We'll do it again. My audience probably wants to hear different people, I imagine. I know. But who knows? We can have a part 2. If nothing else, the 3 of us definitely get together again. We'll talk about it after this. That's funny.
It's so funny every time, not every time, but sometimes when you speak, I feel you in my head, because I was thinking the same. It's like, we had this nice conversation, the 3 of us, and it's true, it was like so like fluid. And I like the fact as well that you were not having this neutral stance and like in the background, but really like fully involved, sharing your personal stories, and like, each one would bounce on what the previous had said, or another one, it would go any direction. So I like that, becoming very natural. And my takeaway for me is actually what you did this program for, is just to see that, you can meet what is it, almost stranger? Almost?
No, not quite.
Not
No,
stranger.
not quite. Yeah, sorry, my English is not so good. Not quite stranger.
It's maybe,
And-
not perhaps.
Exactly. Oh my God, more than 20 years after still, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, not quite strange. Exactly that. Really, for me, I feel like I already know you and I've known you for what, an hour, but yeah. And I don't know if thanks to the magic touch of Valerie, probably as well, but I just feel, again, if you're just being like authentic and the person in front of you is the same, it's like this connection can be so immediate. You don't have to go through, you know, so many phases to get to meet someone. So that was a very nice experience. I feel blessed that we were like the first one, like the second batch. Try your scientific little like being like a guinea pig. Yeah, the potions and. But it works well. I mean, I'm really super like happy. I felt I had like a nice time with you guys. So, and I feel it's so nice because, as you were saying at the beginning of the program, I mean, Valerie, you're in Dallas. Sana, you are in Montreal. I mean, in Geneva. I mean, how incredible is that? All in our living rooms or whatever room you picked. But
and it's only Tuesday.
It's only Tuesday. Yeah.
It's only Tuesday.
I think there's also a learning here, Valerie. It's on another note, but it's also like it's not that difficult, and it's safe to meet somebody not from your labels, or not because of your work or you know what usually we define ourselves by, like if okay, give me a short bio, blah blah blah, but to tap into personal stories and things that I feel that what we shared together is only could be shared because it's something that has been deeply felt in our bodies. And we tapped into those stories, and that's what emerged from those stories, that we could finally, it's very human. All of this is very human. I come back to the senses, but that's the general theme that emerges for me from that conversation. And it's safe and it's not that difficult. Even if an hour ago I didn't know Dominique.
It is.
She's not threatening. There's no threats. I'm not losing anything by opening up on personal stories, even if it's parts and bits of it. But just being that open creates also openness in the others around, and that gives permission to share things that maybe would not be shared if we were in a framework, or if we would felt like, okay, I need to show up in a very specific way because I have to be in a box or whatever. So freedom might be a theme also here. I don't know.
Freedom.
Just a personal reflection that I have right now.
And that you make an interesting point, because I think that's the only way it would have worked. Part of me is also in the background, you know, in the algorithm of Valerie's head is, who are people that I know will be open enough to share something important, insightful, that will be a contribution in conversation. And so I do have in my mind, as I connect people, like for example, the two of you, that I don't know if it's going to click, like I said, forever and ever. I mean, the fact that you guys want to do this again is like, yay, cool, bonus. That's not the expectation, but I did have in my mind that I needed to make sure that there are people who are open enough to have a conversation. Because I do agree, the dimensions that we say are diverse dimensions, diversity dimensions, you know, we talk about race and then nationality or ethnicity or religion and political views, all that. Those are so superficial. And the point that I make to my nieces and nephews, are very young, but I always tell them, you know, you were born in a particular place at a particular time to a particular set of parents, completely random. And that shaped this language you spoke, the beliefs you have, the books you got to read, the people you got to play with. But had you been born in a different part of the world, you had a completely different set of values, likely, or different set of books in your bookshelf, right? Like something so, and I don't want to diminish the impact or the import of that, but it's so arbitrary. It is so arbitrary that the place we're born determines all of a sudden like who we are, and like now we have to live in that frame. And the thing that I think I take away from this conversation, that it just confirms that no, that is not true, and you can be put in any frame. And you fill out the frame the way you want, and then you can change frames and you fill it out, and then you just keep adding frames. And after a while, you can just scroll left and just decide which frame you want to stick with. And then you scroll right. So this was, I think, a beautiful demonstration of the arbitrariness of where we're born and what language we end up speaking does not define who we get to be in the world, what we get to contribute, and how open we are to connecting with other people. So I am so grateful. I'm incredibly blessed too. I just have, you two phenomenal human beings as a part of my life in whatever dimension or for whatever length of time there is. This has just been a beautiful conversation. Thank you both so very much. Any final words?
Thank you. That would be my word.
You did mention that you would leave me out of a conversation if you started speaking French, but I'd love to hear you speak French to each other. I feel like that's, yeah, do it.
Très bien.
Dominique, moi j'étais super content de te rencontrer. C'est une vraie découverte. Puis j'avoue que je suis super curieux maintenant de plein d'autres choses sur toi. Puis j'ai jamais été en Suisse, fait que
tu es toujours le bienvenu. Quand on pourra voyager, tu seras le bienvenu.
Mais Genève a l'air d'être
welcome to Geneva. Yeah, both of you are welcome to visit me once the virtual world opens up to again more safe travels across the ocean.
Très bien, fantastique. Je ne parle pas français.
She's so cute.
Je ne parle pas français. Je parle un peu. I remember in college, there was this guy, his name is Fabian. I don't even remember his last name anymore, but he taught me, he wrote it for me. That was the first French lesson I had. He's like, je m'appelle Valérie, je suis une gentille fille, je n'aime pas boire, je n'aime pas les gens qui fument.
Well, that means that you're perfect.
Boring.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, some people would say boring, but that's okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Oh, thank you two so very much. I'm so grateful, like I said, for you being a yes to this. And we will definitely get in contact again and riff and see what else is there. And if you know other people that you think would be great for me to meet, I am open to that as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
that would be nice. Yeah,
100%.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a joy and a pleasure.
It was lovely. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and there's more to come. So make sure you stay tuned. It's not over yet.
You've been listening to the podcast Not Quite Strangers. Be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite video or podcast platform. And for more information and content, go to notquitestrangers.com. See you next time.